Let's go and have a look at the property market now. Joining us from CoreLogic is analyst Kevin Brogan. Kevin Brogan, good to see you. We have seen an increase since the start of the year, but the reports out of last week, auctions are just heating up again. We're starting to see people re-engage in looking to buy or sell real estate. What have you seen in the last week? What are you expecting this weekend?
Yeah, sure, Laura. We saw a weekend last week, which was the first time that the market really sort of kicked off with more than 1,000 auctions. There were 1,200 across the capital cities. Sydney led the way with a 77.6% clearance rate, and Melbourne was at 68.5%. We're actually seeing across some of the smaller capital city markets a reduction in activity, but overall this week we're seeing over 1,400 auctions. And Melbourne really is sort of leading the way in terms of activity, with a 56% increase in the number of auctions this week compared to last.
Why do you think there's such a jump in Melbourne?
Oh, look, I think the market in Melbourne finished 2019 very strongly. And I think that sort of momentum is carried through. We always see a little bit of a slow start to the year after an extended summer break. And the Melbourne market, I suppose, is sort of reaching its straps. It is the largest capital city auction market in Australia, so it's not surprising that it is sort of pulling ahead a bit at the moment.
Now, auctions are usually indicative of a pretty hot property market, but are you still seeing a lot of sales before auction, private sales, rather than getting to that auction stage?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. We do monitor how properties sell either prior to auction or perhaps immediately after the auction. It's interesting from a vendor's perspective. If the market is running quite hot, you would expect as a vendor to do quite well at auction, so you're less likely to accept an offer prior to auction. Whereas if the market is perhaps a little slower, you might actually see, the purchasers perhaps more likely to wait until an auction. So, look, it's actually quite difficult monitoring that in terms of giving any insights into the way that the market's travelling.
We saw an increase in loans for first home buyers at the end of 2019, but has that dropped off a bit? Who are we seeing looking to buy and sell property at this point?
Yeah, look, I think the market is dominated by owner-occupiers in particular. We did, as you say, see a significant increase in housing finance commitments. And in fact, December, the ABS data is just out to show a 4.4% increase in housing commitments in December, which is the largest increase over 3 years and 14% higher than the same time last year. You're going to see in Sydney and Melbourne in particular, affordability constraints are going to be an issue as prices continue to rise in those capital cities, because prices have been rising through the final quarter of 2019 at quite a rapid rate, and wages growth has not been at that same sort of level.
Has anything outside of the capital cities piqued your interest? Is there any regional, rural, outer city areas that are going through a mini boom?
Yeah, look, we do also report on the main regional markets. Geelong was actually the strongest performer last week. A relatively small market with only 25 auctions, but 80% clearance rate. The next highest was the Hunter, where I think there are about 68 auctions, and the clearance rate there was over 60%. And of course, Hunter and Newcastle are quite a strong sort of economy, and maybe just perform a little bit differently just outside the gravitational pull of the Sydney market.